Welcome to All Pro Football Data. My name is Jim Coburn. In today's episode, we're talking about top 10 running backs based on data in the 2024 NFL draft class, based on production and other statistical factors. So, this is another video like the wide receiver video I just did. We're going to break down all 10 wide receivers based on their overall data grade. And you might be wondering, what is a data grade? Well, it's a grade based on various data points. So what are the things I use in my evaluation for running backs based on data? First of all, offensive market share production. Second, running back efficiency scores. Third, athleticism scores. And then fourth, adjusted production scores. So with all this stuff out of the way, let's get to the list. So number 10, the 10th best running back in the 2024 NFL draft class is Braylon Allen from Wisconsin. The pros is he has good production overall and an elite age score. Cons, he has average explosiveness, average receiving market share, and did not go through full athletic testing. He's one of those prospects that honestly, he should have just did everything. He should have went to the combine and did everything there. A lot of people are saying this because he's going to run 4.6, 4.7, pull Audric Esteem. But I think in terms of his overall data profile, there are question marks there. I think because he didn't test and go through the full measure of athleticism for him, it kind of drops him a little bit because his production wasn't elite. There were elite aspects to it, but it wasn't totally elite. And then, of course, you don't know what he is as an athlete. So a lot of that is kind of the main reason he's number 10. Now, when you get to his data, his production data, this is his offensive market share data in terms of total offensive market share, receiving market share, and touchdown market share. And then, of course, this is his efficiency scores. He was pretty efficient with the football in all three levels of the game, whether it's, through touch, average yards per touch, or average yards per reception, or rushing yards per reception. He was pretty good in all those different areas, which is basically, or rushing yards per touch is basically, touch yards per touch. Now, when you get to athleticism data, he had a 68 percentile explosion score and 86 percentile speed score. Those are decent numbers. Again, the speed score is more so a projected speed score, so we don't know what his actual 40-yard dash is. I just went with what was posted on NFLDraftScout.com. He could be slower than this. He could be more so like a 60 percentile guy in terms of his speed. But he's so big that even if he ran a 4.6, he would still have above average speed for his size. So regardless of that, I kind of just went with the speed score they went on NFL Draft Scout. It may not be accurate, but this is kind of what he would profile as if he actually ran what he was supposed to run on NFL Draft Scout. Now, when you get to his adjusted production score, this is the biggest thing that kind of helps profile out is his age. He was 99 percentile in terms of age, his overall age. He's probably the youngest running back to ever come out in the NFL since 1969. And 78 percentile for his MSA rating, 89 percentile in terms of his pass rating. And his overall data is, as you can see, solid. He has a solid all-around profile for the position, and I think that's a positive for him. Now we get to number 9, which is Kamryn Vidal from Troy. The pros, he has elite athleticism traits and solid production traits. Cons, he did not play against high-level competition compared to other backs for his production. His overall data grade was 82.23 out of 100. Looking at his market share production, same kind of quality, similar profile. There's a lot of running backs that have this type of profile where it's high total offensive market share production with average receiving market share, and then below average, or I wouldn't say below average, but above average touchdown market share. That's like a lot of backs in this class. So there's nothing really special about his production traits. It's just pretty prototypical for a running back that mainly does running versus catching the football out of the backfield. Now, when he gets his efficiency scores, he did really well in terms of his yards per touch. His yards per reception was also pretty decent, and then his touchdown percentage was a little average. So he wasn't the best in terms of touchdowns. You can kind of see that in his market share data, but he was good enough to be considered a solid guy from this kind of perspective. So didn't have elite efficiency, but did have good enough efficiency to kind of pass the thresholds. Then, of course, you get to his running back athleticism traits, which is the biggest thing. This is the biggest thing to highlight is his overall athleticism, 90 plus percentile terms of speed and flexibility, and then he had a near elite explosion score. He's probably one of the most athletic running backs in this class, not named Isaac Gurindo. He's not on this list. He's more so in the top 20 kind of area because his production kind of drops him a lot, but that's Kamani Vidal. And of course, adjusted production, as you can see, the biggest thing that kind of lowers him is his level of competition, his age. Those are the sort of factors that makes him more in the starter average than he is in the Pro Bowl or All-Pro average. Now, when you move on to number 8 is Carson Steele from UCLA. Pros, he had elite production traits and near elite explosiveness. Cons, he had below average production, and his elite production was against a lower level competition. His overall data grade is 82.49 out of 100. Now, in terms of his market share, same thing. 90 plus percentile in total offensive market share, 90 plus percentile in terms of touchdown market share, average receiving market share. See a pattern here? A lot of running backs are like that in this class. Not really doing much of the receiving, just doing the other stuff like getting in the end zone and getting yards on the ground. Then, of course, you get to running back efficiency data for him. His efficiency was a little, not the best, but decent. And then athleticism traits-wise, he had a near elite explosion score, good below average speed score, and then a 57 percentile flexibility score. So his athleticism wasn't that great. He definitely was very similar to Audric Esteem. Not as fast as Esteem. He was a little slower than that. But I think his overall profile does make him somebody that could become like Alexander Madison. Or there's a couple different backs that are kind of like him. Joique Bell. Those are the types of running backs that he might end up as. He's not necessarily going to be like a long-term starter anywhere, but he could end up becoming a pretty solid kind of contributing back, if you will, like a Rex Burkhead type back, if that makes any sense. Then we get to his adjusted production scores, which are, again, closer to a starter than a All-Pro or Pro Bowl player. That's kind of why he's number 8 on this list. There's not a lot of running backs that actually had Pro Bowl and All-Pro overall production traits, which we'll get to towards the top, but that's just kind of where he is. Now, getting to number 7, we have Will Shipley from Clemson. The pros, he had good production traits and athleticism. Cons, does not have any athletic traits, or any elite traits, I should say. So his production isn't elite, his athleticism isn't elite, it's just above average. He's just above average in everything. So he's good in everything, but he's not a master of any one thing. And that's the biggest thing from a data profile. That's his issue. Now, his overall data grade was 82.58 out of 100. When you look at his market share data here, you can see 60 percentile in terms of total offensive market share, 70 percentile in terms of his receiving market share, and 67 percentile in terms of touchdowns. As you can see, good, not great. Close to the starter averages, but nothing elite. Then, of course, you get to his efficiency scores, pretty decent in everything except for yards per reception, but everything is decent here, especially his TD percentage is pretty high on that mark. Then, of course, you get to his athleticism traits, 72 percentile explosion, 64 percentile speed, and 75 percentile flexibility for his overall athleticism traits. Again, above average, not elite. And then, of course, you get to his adjusted production traits, which are closer to a starter than a All-Pro player. Now, when you get to number 6 on the list, we have Frank Gore Jr. from Southern Mississippi. Pros, good production traits overall and decent age score. Cons, production was mostly against non-Power 5 competition and did not test at the Combine or Pro Day. His overall data grade is 83.23 out of 100 for Frank Gore Jr. Looking at his production traits, a better receiving market share. That's kind of the biggest thing that bumps him up a lot is his receiving market share. He's a much better receiver in terms of his production than a lot of the running backs in this class. Almost said wide receivers. And then, of course, you have 82 percentile in terms of his total offensive market share, 90 percentile in terms of touchdown market share. Those are pretty decent marks. But again, it was lower level competition. It wasn't, Power 5 conference, if you will, in Southern Mississippi. Now, in terms of his efficiency scores, great in terms of his yards per reception. Another reason why he's higher on this list than a lot of running backs on this list is because he had that receiving production. A lot of running backs don't have that production in this class, which is what pushes Frank Gore up so much in terms of this, production profile for him. Now, in terms of his athleticism traits, he didn't do any testing. The 40-yard dash that was reported on NFLDraftScout.com put him at about a 63 percentile speed score. I think that's pretty close to reality. I mean, he's probably not going to run like a 4.4 or 4.3. He was more of a 4.5-ish guy in terms of what he was projected to run. Now, of course, he's not going to do any athletic testing. A lot of that is because he's, well, Frank Gore Jr. He has the name brand to him. So there's going to be some team that's going to draft him based on his name. And he did have the production and film to kind of back up him being drafted somewhere. But it would have been nice to see what he tested as compared to his father, Frank Gore, who, of course, has some injury concerns going into his testing. So Frank Gore didn't really test that well as an athlete, but he was also injured at the time. So it would be interesting if we could actually see what Frank Gore would have tested like if he actually was healthy. But regardless, getting to his adjusted production scores here, pretty decent in terms of 70 percentile in terms of age, MSA, and pass. Again, the biggest thing that holds him down is his level of competition, and his age isn't the youngest he could possibly be. It's not terrible, but it is, he's a little older compared to other running backs in this class. Then we get to number 5. Number 5 is Jaylen Wright from Tennessee. Pros, elite speed / explosiveness and great efficiency scores. Cons, below average market share production. Data grade 83.90 out of 100. In terms of Jaylen Wright, when you look at his production, 54 percentile in terms of total offensive market share, 41 percentile in terms of receiving market share, and then 27.82 in terms of touchdown market share. He's probably has one of the worst market share production overall grades in the top 10 that I'm mentioning and talking about in this class. A lot of people are going to talk about, well, the offensive line was a problem and Tennessee was a mess, and there was all this, there's all these boosters getting into him. I've heard some people say that, he doesn't run to daylight. He lets the offensive line set up his blocks, and he can kind of see blocks that haven't been blocked yet because he has this spidey sense, and the offensive line just wasn't doing what it needed to do to really showcase his ability. There's a lot of excuses for why he didn't have production. The fact of the matter is he just didn't have the production. He didn't put up the production you would expect out of a starter, a Pro Bowler, or All-Pro player coming from that program. Now, he is number 5 on this list because of these reasons. Number 1, efficiency. He was incredibly efficient in terms of his yards per touch. He was 90 plus percentile in terms of that. I think the number was like about 7 yards plus per touch, or some crazy number like that. And then of course when you look at his TD percentage, he also had a pretty decent TD percentage. His yards per reception was low, which is surprising. Overall, didn't have a lot of production in that department, but it is surprising for him to have as low of a yards per reception score as he did. And then, of course, when you get to his athleticism traits, this is another reason why he's so high in this list, is that he has a 90 percentile explosion score and a 93 percentile flexibility score. Again, elite athleticism traits at the position, but just doesn't quite have the production to go with it. If he was a much more productive running back, we would be talking about him as a first-round back in this class. I don't think any of the running backs in this class should go in the first round, but he has that athleticism that scouts are looking for at the position. He just doesn't have the production to go with it, which is an issue. It really is. But he still is number 5 in this list because he has those positive traits. Maybe the offensive line did hold him back. Maybe Tennessee was not that great of a team and kind of caused him to not produce the way he needed to produce. Maybe there was a lot of politics on the team that prevented him from doing that. I've even heard people say, well, the scheme, he was in a scheme that didn't allow him to get touchdowns. He wasn't asked to do that. I mean, you're gonna have lots of things like that. And again, I'm not denying these things as things that could be true, but I'm just going off of what he is on paper. And what he is on paper compared to past running backs is a little questionable. There's some question marks here. You have to admit that. You can't just keep throwing out the, excuses. Now, in terms of adjusted production, there's another reason why he's higher on this list. He has a great age score, 96 percentile in terms of his age. When you look at the MSA rating, 59 percentile, and you look at his pass rating, 78 percentile in terms of that particular area. He's a little bit of a coin flip. He really is. I mean, now he could be the best back from this class. He's the most athletic, one of the most athletic running backs from this class, who played against SEC competition and had a crazy yards per touch score. So he could be the best back in this class. What he might more so look like, though, at the NFL level, might be somebody like James Cook on the Buffalo Bills, who gets a lot of yards and maybe gets 4 touchdowns every year. I mean, I could be wrong, again, but that's what he did on paper. So he's still number 5 in this list. But again, there's a lot of reasons why he's not the top back in this class, and these are the main reasons why from a data perspective. Now, getting to number 4 on this list, we have Trey Benson from Florida State. The pros, he had elite speed, good age, and a decent pass score, which is basically his adjusted production data. His cons is average market share production and average explosiveness. His overall data grade was 89.15 out of 100. Looking at his market share scores, average, total offensive market share, slightly above average receiving market share, and then slightly above average touchdown market share. Nothing to really write home here. His market share production just wasn't that great overall. When you get to his efficiency scores, decent efficiency, not really, decent enough, 70 percentile to 90 percentile in terms of his TD percentage. So he had good efficiency scores. This is one reason why he's bumped up a lot on this list, is because of these efficiency scores. Then when he gets his athleticism traits, 93 percentile, pretty much 94 percentile. Let's just bump it up. 94 percentile in terms of speed, and then 57 percentile in terms of explosiveness for his size. His profile is very similar to guys like Leonard Fournette, another back, Latavius Murray, DeMarco Murray. Those are the types of running backs he tested very similar to based on this production profile overall, or Travis Etienne from Jacksonville, but he's not quite as productive as Travis was at Clemson. Now, when he gets his adjusted production scores, this is another reason why he's bumped up so high in this list, is 90 percentile in terms of his pass rating, 72 percentile in terms of MSA, and then 89 percentile in terms of his age score. Big reason why his pass score is higher than an MSA rating is that his overall market share data, which is what the MSA kind of looks at, is just market share data plus age plus strength of schedule, strength of team. It doesn't have those efficiency scores to bump up his grade. So his efficiency is really helping him out a lot when you look at the pass score, which is more correlative than the MSA rating is. Now, when you get to number 3 on this list, we have Ray Davis from Kentucky. Pros, near elite production traits overall and solid athleticism traits. Cons, significantly below average age and below average flexibility. His data grade is 89.49 out of 100. Looking at his market share data, great, fantastic. Near elite in terms of total offensive market share, 85 percentile. Receiving market share, 94 percentile in terms of touchdown market share. These are good numbers for him. Then you get to his efficiency scores. Decent efficiency. Yards per touch was about 60 percentile. Yards per reception was about 60 percentile. But he had a great TD percentage. He was a guy who got a lot of touchdowns. And then, of course, when you look at his athleticism traits, 75 percentile in terms of explosiveness, 80 percentile in terms of speed, and 42 percentile in terms of flexibility for his size. He definitely has a power back-like profile to him. Very similar to Julius Jones. I don't know if you guys remember Julius Jones or not, but very similar profile to him, who was a former Dallas Cowboy and played on a couple of different teams, but very similar athleticism profile to him. Now, when you get to his adjusted production traits, this is the biggest knock on him overall for Ray Davis, is his age score is a 2.83 out of 100, meaning that almost 97% of all the running backs that have come out in the draft since 1969 were younger than him. This definitely hurts him. But at the same time, when you added his age to his MSA rating and his pass rating, he still scored pretty high despite his age. So as much as the age score is a concern, it is something that you could automatically disqualify him for because of that. I think this class, you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. I think he was so productive. He has the athleticism that you're looking for, that he could end up becoming a long-term starter in this class. He may not be a guy who produces, for 5 straight seasons. He might retire like within 4, but I think he might have a lot more success than a lot of people are giving him credit for. And I know a lot of people have been kind of saying he doesn't have great athleticism, and his RAS was not that great, and all this kind of stuff. But the bottom line is his production traits were decent enough. His age is a concern, but he does have good athleticism traits for his size. And those are things that I think are going to carry his profile out long term. Now we get to number two. Number two, we have Jonathan Brooks from Texas. Pros, great age score and pass score. Cons, did not go through athletic testing and production is not elite. His data grade is 90.75 out of 100. When you look at his production data here, market share wise, 60 percentile in terms of his total offensive market share, 68 percentile in terms of receiving, and 54 percentile in terms of touchdown market share. Those numbers are not that fantastic, but they are better than guys like Trey Benson, for example. Looking at his efficiency scores, this is an area where he did really well too in terms of his yards per touch and yards per reception. TD percentage wasn't the best, but these are decent numbers for him, especially in terms of efficiency scores. Looking at his athleticism traits, again, hasn't done any athletic testing. This is based on his projected 40-yard dash. He had a 77 percentile in terms of his speed score. So this is a good number for him to have here overall in terms of his data. And then, of course, we get to his adjusted production traits, 99 percentile in terms of age, 87 percentile in terms of MSA, and 95.46 in terms of his pass rating. Those numbers are pretty solid for him overall, and I think that's a good starting point for him. So Jonathan Brooks, in a lot of ways, his adjusted production is really what's pushing his data grade up. Age, those different production traits are kind of the biggest thing that really help him out. Didn't really do the testing. That could help or hurt him, honestly. But I think you just have to go. You just have to go with it. So I understand he is injured. You don't really know what you're going to get long term, but he did put up a better production profile than a lot of backs in this class. He has the age. He has all the other stuff you're looking for, which is why he's number 2 on this list. Then, of course, we get to number 1. The number 1 running back in the 2024 NFL draft class is Audric Estim from Notre Dame. Now, again, I didn't tailor this for him to be number 1, but he just became number 1 when I did all the data stuff on him. Now, why is he the number 1 data back in this class, you might say? How is a running back that runs 4.71 the best back in this draft class? I think that's what a lot of you guys are probably asking yourselves right now. And honestly, I can explain it. Pros, elite pass score, elite explosiveness for his size, elite age score. Cons, average to below average speed, and production was not elite. His data grade is 92.35 out of 100. Again, he doesn't have an elite data grade. It's not like a 99 percentile type running back prospect, but these are still good, solid numbers. Looking at his production traits, 79 percentile in terms of total offensive market share, 49 percentile in terms of receiving market share, and then he had 82 percentile in terms of touchdown market share. Those numbers are pretty decent for a back like him, but again, he's very similar to guys like Braylon Allen, Kamani Vidal, Carson Steele. The list goes on, but he's younger than all those running backs, played against tougher competition than all those running backs. So that's the biggest reason why he's number 1 on this list, is because of the competition that he faced with his age. He's much younger than those guys and played against much tougher competition based on not Pro Football Reference, but College Football References, SRS and SOS scoring system. Now, going to running back efficiency scores, his yards per touch was near the 90 percentile, his TD percentage was in the 90 percentile, and then his yards per reception was average. Again, he's not that great of a receiving back. And I think that definitely is a knock. That's definitely something that I think a lot of people will just brush him under the rug and kind of get rid of him because of that. But the only back who really tested well in this class in terms of receiving was Frank Gore Jr. I mean, he was the only back who really did really well as a receiver, with the exception of maybe Tyrone Tracy Jr. would be another running back to throw in there, but he's really, really, really old, but doesn't have as well-rounded of a profile as, say, Ray Davis does. So in terms of esteem, those are kind of what you're looking at in terms of efficiency scores. Then, of course, athleticism traits, 93 percentile in terms of explosiveness, 67 percentile in terms of his speed score for what he ran at his pro day. Now, I know what a lot of you guys are thinking. Jim, how does a 4.71 running back get a 67 percentile speed score? Well, I'll tell you why. Because he went to his pro day and he ran 4.5 instead of running 4.7. Now, if you want to go with the 4.7, yeah, he had a 30 percentile speed score if you want to go with the 40 from the combine. But If you believe in the pro day number, if you believe in it, he would test 67 percentile in terms of that. And this isn't what was reported on Twitter. This is more so what's reported from NFL Draft Scout, which is a little bit more reliable than what the agent puts out or what other people put out on Twitter. So, it's a little better than that initial jump, like, oh, he ran 4.4, a 4.3 40, and all this kind of stuff. Wait until NFL Draft Scout posts the numbers, and you'll get a more realistic 40-yard dash. A little bit more realistic 40-yard dash for him. So that's totally up to you guys, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he probably did run, a low end 4.5, like 4.58 is essentially what I gave him based on the data. I'm assuming he got some improvements, did better. Now, in terms of his running back adjusted production, running back adjusted production, again, takes a look at the age, MSA, and pass score. Audric Esteem, elite age score, elite pass score, 83 percentile in terms of MSA rating. His age score is a big reason why his profile is as bumped up as it is. But that is the top 10 running backs in the 2024 NFL Draft Class based on data. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to check out some other things right here. If you want to check out more videos on the channel, definitely do that. Leave a comment below. Who are your top 10 running backs in this particular draft class? Or just give me your top 5. Just let me know your top 5 in that order. Make sure you also consider becoming a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/jcoburn. The 2024 NFL Draft Guide, which I released and have released 8 times in the past, and this will be my 9th attempt at making this guide, is coming out very soon. And Patreon subscribers will get first dibs at it. Specifically, the starter patrons will get first dibs at it when it finally comes out. So definitely consider going there if you're interested in that. And also follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, @Geometrics. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.